What?
Hello YouTube! Today on Ecoswap, we will be taking one of the most successful lineages of all time, the Trilobites, and putting them into the Mediterranean Sea, a recently formed body of seawater that played a huge role in human history. We will look into our 4 categories: pros and cons, environmental compatibility, calorie acquisition, and interspecific conflict to see if, when given a second chance, the Trilobites can reclaim their former glory.
If you change your mind, I'm the first in line. Honey, I'm still free. Take a chance on me.
We'll start with a brief overview of these little critters, as sadly most people are unfamiliar with them, despite their 290 million year dominance over the Earth. In many paintings or documentaries, they are often part of the background, just something to outline the bigger animals. First appearing in the early Cambrian 521 million years ago, and only going extinct 250 million years ago, their reign is one of the longest of any multicellular animal. Almost 300 million years of being one of the most abundant animals on the planet. So common, the presence of a species is used to date entire rock formations. You may not like it, but this is what peak life looks like. Over 22,000 species have been described over 8 orders. Because of this incredible diversity, I'll be choosing 3 species in particular for today's episode. But before I name them, let's go over the basics. Trilobites get their name from their central axis, and the 2 lobes on either side. Ironic, since their bodies are made up of 3 sections, the head, thorax, and pygidium, and their heads have 3 sections as well, the glabella, free cheek, and fixed cheek. Trilobite literally means 3 lobes. Like all arthropods, they have an exoskeleton, a mineralized outer shell keeping their inside safe from harm. This chitin is mostly formed of calcium, just like with modern-day crustaceans and mollusks. And just like crustaceans, they would have to molt and shed their exoskeleton over time to grow. During this shed, they will be soft and squishy, and especially vulnerable to predation. Most trilobites reproduced in shallow waters, with even most deep-sea species moving up the water column to breed. This would have been similar to modern-day horseshoe crabs. All trilobites could skitter on land for short periods of time, though even the best equipped couldn't last on land for longer than 30 minutes before their gills dried out. Their exoskeleton is the primary, and often only form of defense trilobites have. The tough outer shell varies in thickness depending on the species. Some trilobites had additional spines for protection, and some rolled up into a ball like an armadillo. Trilobites held nearly every role over their nearly 300 million year reign: predator, scavenger, grazer, and detritivore. Some even had a symbiotic relationship with sulfur-digesting bacteria to expand their diet even more. We can tell what lifestyle they had thanks to their glabella, a small pouch in the back of their head containing the mouth parts and digestive system. Most took advantage of their compound eyes, similar to modern dragonflies, though some had reduced and tiny eyes hidden in their plates of chitin. Because they existed for such a long period of time, trilobites have managed to coexist with a wide variety of potential rivals and predators. They've seen the rise and fall of predatory arthropods like Anomalocaris and Pterygotus, placoderm fish like Dunkleosteus, the marine amphibians called Traumattosaurs, reptilian nothosaurids, the beginning of the ichthyosaurs, and of course a myriad of fish and sharks. It took the combination of 3 separate extinction events to eventually topple them from the worldwide reign. First was the Ordovician extinction, a massive ice age that hit shelled ocean animals particularly hard. This glaciation destroyed shallow water environments and forced organisms into deeper water. The second half of this event was when the glaciers retreated, waters warmed, and oxygen levels plummeted, forming massive patches of anoxic water, or water that lacks oxygen. Trilobites lost a little less than half their diversity to this event, but came out the other side. The Devonian extinction is a bit more of a mystery, with causes ranging from another glaciation event, underwater volcanic activity, or even a comet impact. Whatever the source, it created another anoxic water event. This wiped out 2/3 of the remaining trilobites. Finally, the Permian extinction event, nicknamed the Great Dying, a surge of global volcanic activity that wiped out over 90% of life on Earth. This event was a doozy. The closest life on Earth went to disappearing forever. It was this nail in the coffin that doomed the Trilobites, ending a nearly 300 million year success story. On to our specific species. First is Isotelis rex, the largest trilobite to ever exist, that we know of.
I prefer the real raven. I said the real raven. Perfection.
At 2 feet long, or about 0.6 meters, these massive heckin' chonkers spent their whole lives in shallow waters, mainly in reef systems. They preferred warm waters on the rocky shores in Ordovician Canada, which was at the equator at the time. Irex was named after its shield-shaped body. Shield-shaped. Get your minds out of the gutter.
This is a penis?
Yes!
Based on related trilobites, Irex was a deposit feeder, sifting through sediment for tasty minerals and nutrients. As part of the ocean's detritivores, they played a vital role in recycling dead and decaying bits of organic matter in reefs and shorelines. It may have occasionally hunted larger game, but evidence of rooted, parasitic fauna sitting on its head suggests otherwise. Whether it was a barnacle or some other kind of latch parasite is unknown, as all we have are the roots of some kind of attachment. Regardless, its antennae, referred from related trilobites, likely helped it find food and detect potential predators. Due to its habitat and size, there wasn't much that could touch them. Fun fact, Irex is the state fossil of Ohio. Next is Elrathia kingi, from the Middle Cambrian. An earlier, more basal trilobite, they were remarkably abundant. Not only did their remains make up almost 4% of life in their home formation, their remains have been passed along as trinkets and totems by humans for hundreds of thousands of years. This success is accredited to their fossils being almost exclusively found in anoxic conditions. They thrive in low oxygen environments, and may have been part of an entirely unknown ecosystem. They reached about 15 to 40 millimeters in length, or half an inch to an inch and a half long. They fed on small particulates in the water and sand, picking up food wherever they could find it. While their fossils were mostly from North America, they have remnants and cousins all over the globe, showcasing just how widespread and common they were. Elrathia kingi may have had a knack for narrowly escaping predation. Out of 229 documented specimens found in a 1-meter block, 11 were found to have indentations in their armor caused by a failed predation attempt.
Imperfection is beautiful. At least to me.
Last, but certainly not least, is Wallocerops trifurcatus, a much more unique animal than the first two. From the Middle Devonian, Wallocerops might have been one of the first animals known to have intraspecific conflict with one another. These large, horn-like protrusions on their heads may have been used by males in shoving contests over females. The winner was whichever bite managed to flip over their rival, getting the chance to...
Oh my god!
Females had these horns too, but they were smaller and likely only used when fighting over food.
Give me a man after midnight. Want somebody help me chase the shadows away.
To hold these large horns off the sandy bottom while foraging, Wallocerops actually had an asymmetrical exoskeleton. There is a great deal of variation among the specimens assigned to Wallocerops, and paleontologists still aren't sure whether each variation represents a multitude of subspecies, sexual dimorphism, or random mutations. Another fun fact, Wallocerops could be left or right forked, preferring to use either side of the trident, just like humans can be left or right-handed. A poor swimmer and digger, Wallocerops likely relied on its many spines to defend itself from predation. They may have been able to roll into a ball, but its large horns would have remained sticking out, so it's unclear if this would have been effective. From what I can tell, Wallocerops was also a detritivore, but I've been unable to find any papers on its diet, so take that with a grain of salt. Ironically, this trilobite will be transported in time, but not much in space. Native to Paleozoic Morocco, this little fella lived right on what would become the Mediterranean coast. Trilobites had some notable weak points. Like modern crustaceans, they would be soft and squishy when molting, which was an already difficult process.
You must be at least this naked? How much nakeder could you be?
Watch and learn.
Predators would have an easy time with them during this stage. They also relied on stable coastlines or river mouths for reproduction, and if these disappeared, most trilobites would be in trouble. Plus, all three of our species come from times when life on land hadn't diversified much, meaning they didn't have as many predators on the beaches. With the ultimate life forms covered, let's get on to our setting. The Mediterranean Sea was not always so. 5.9 million years ago, it was a vast salty basin, having been blocked off from the Atlantic due to the closure of the Strait of Gibraltar. Any endemic life there would have died out during the next 500,000 years. 5.3 million years ago, an event called the Zanclean Flood refilled the sea. The Strait of Gibraltar opened up once more, and the Atlantic Ocean flooded in. In less than 2 years, the Mediterranean was reformed again. What this means for us is that this sea is relatively new, a prime habitat for second chances. We will be dropping our trilobites into the sea exactly 5.1 million years ago, giving the waters a chance to settle before throwing in our little skillet shrimps into the mess. This is right at the beginning of the Pliocene. 5 million years ago, the Mediterranean was very subject to the same generalized cooling and desertification the rest of the world was going through. The region would have been dry and arid, and despite the global cooling, it was still warm by today's standards. Salt levels would have been slightly higher than the Atlantic, though not so high that life would struggle. Most life in the Mediterranean would have come from the North Atlantic after the waters stopped flowing in. Just as it is today, the Mediterranean was quite warm and shallow during the Pliocene. One would think it was colder, as the general temperature in the Atlantic was colder than today. However, due to the Bering Strait and the Canadian Arctic archipelago cutting off the North Pole, the Atlantic in the Pliocene was actually warmer than today. While today it averages between 21 and 20 degrees Celsius, or 68 degrees Fahrenheit, in the Pliocene it would have been 30 degrees Celsius, or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Predating most modern lineages, trilobites would be used to just about any kind of environment they come across. Reefs made of coral or sponges, or even organisms that no longer exist were their homes, and modern reefs wouldn't have too much of a difference. At least in terms of the shape of the environment, there's many new players involved who we'll get into later. Trilobites have even been found inside the shells of other ocean-dwelling critters like clams, oysters, and nautiloids. Trilobites also thrived in the deep ocean, which is one of the least changed environments on the planet. While the Mediterranean only has a deepest point of about 5,000 meters, or 16,000 feet deep, that's still just enough to reach the abyssal zone, though the average depth is about 1,500 meters, or 4,900 feet. Relatively shallow, at least compared with the oceans. All this being said, trilobites preferred warmer, shallower waters, making the Mediterranean a perfect bath for them. We'll be dropping them off of Greece, in the bays between Athens and Sparta.
You, quadruped, sprechen Sie English?
I sprechen.
What continent is this?
This is Sparta!
What?
Honey, honey, how he thrills me. Honey, honey. Honey, honey, nearly kills me. Honey, honey.
Being detritivores, our three trilobites have little to worry about in terms of food. The sandy or rocky bottoms of the seafloor always have some food to offer.
Teddy, you'll eat anything.
What? I won't eat anything. I'm pretty discerning.
Eat this.
What was that? Don't feed a guy a sponge, Bobby. Don't feed a guy a sponge.
You put it in your mouth, Teddy.
Bits of plant and animal matter in the substrate or smaller animals hidden in burrows are a plentiful source of food. In deeper waters, marine snow, a never-ending storm of drifting or sinking organic matter, is plentiful. If anything, trilobites have access to more food in the modern age. The largest marine animals rarely got bigger than a great white shark during the Paleozoic. Even the biggest placoderms or orthocones were smaller than your average orca. Trilobites have never seen a whale fall before.
Valhalla! Am I in Valhalla?
The greater surplus of resources means that the new arthropods have more food than they can eat, especially given their diet of choice is so low on the trophic levels. There's always a huge amount of smaller animals passing away and settling on the seafloor. But with so much food brings competition. Eating at the bottom of the food chain brings a lot of mouths to the table. While Trilobite armor means they are tough to shake off a food source, their slow speed means they will often be late to the party. First up are the hagfish, the outermost group of fish on the planet. They only barely qualify as fish in the first place, since, they never evolved proper jaws. Despite this, they're almost as old as the Trilobites themselves, so they may even recognize their old companions. Competition between trilobites and hagfish won't be too intense. Hagfish can only rip off chunks of meat by latching on with teeth and twisting their bodies like a corkscrew. Limited to the softer foods, the hagfish won't be a problem. More fish, such as mullets, sturgeons, catfish, snappers, groupers, blennies, and flounders are all sifting through the sand for food as well, not to mention the young of many other groups of fish. However, trilobites are no stranger to fish swimming around them. Their time among the placoderms has them well prepared to ignore or outlast fish. Sea cucumbers, starfish, and urchins also all compete for food, but trilobites are faster than all of them and have better senses to boot. And again, they'd be familiar with these organisms since they existed in the Paleozoic as well. More interesting is a group of competitors that coexisted with trilobites briefly, but didn't explode in diversity until after the Great Dying. A group that, while not as old, has reached a level of success so plentiful and well known that there's even a name for animals turning into them. Carcinization is a term used to describe other crustaceans evolving into crabs. Decapods, the group that contains all modern crabs, lobsters, crayfish, shrimp, and prawns, first appeared in the Devonian, but they didn't explode into the species diversity we know today until the Jurassic and Cretaceous. So trilobites never had to compete with them before. Not like this.
Finally, a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary!
Many crabs and lobsters have the exact same ecological role as trilobites, being detritivores and scavengers. To add insult to injury, they move about the same speed, maybe a bit faster, so both groups will reach food sources at the same rate. What we have here is a full-on arthropod war.
Avengers! Assemble.
This matchup could go either way. The decapods have better offensive capabilities, with large claws that could flip our trilobites over. Some of the largest, like northern lobsters or coconut crabs, might even be able to break that armor, though neither of those species are present in the Mediterranean. Most crabs and other decapods won't have the muscle or power to flip a trilobite of equal size. And one of our trilobites, Balacerops, can flip over the crustaceans in return with its large horn. Trilobites have one big advantage that I think lets them compete. Given their mouth parts are so low to the ground, and their entire bodies are flat and compact, I think they could easily shove their way into a crowd of animals on a carcass, forcing the long-legged crustaceans to walk on their backs as the trilobite helps itself to whatever is available for food. The modern seas carry an abundance of predators to watch out for. Sharks were only getting the hang of being predators when trilobites were kicking, so while they've seen them before, it's not quite the same. That said, not a lot of sharks sift through the seabed to feed on heavily armored arthropods. And those that do prefer relatively softer prey like crabs. Notable sharks for our trilobites to watch out for include the short-nosed spur dog, various angel sharks, small spotted cat shark, starry smooth hound shark, pig-eye shark, and the sandbar shark. Also to watch out for are the chimeras. No, not the Greek ones, though I suppose those are here too, huh? Chimeras are another cartilaginous fish, like sharks, but a bit more distantly related and far, far older. Already familiar with this older cartilaginous fish, trilobites would be used to its pressure and have defenses against it. The much bigger cartilaginous issue are skates and rays. Most of them specialize in taking on crustaceans, and trilobites won't be that different. And to make it worse, the entire clade only at first appears in the Jurassic, so trilobites have no experience against them. The Mediterranean packs a few dozen species. The common and black-finned guitarfish, blue skates, porcupine ray, reticulated ray, spiny butterfly ray, common eagle ray, round fantail ray, broad stingray, bull ray, and common stingray all specialize in hunting small crustaceans. They won't mind a few that are crunchier than normal. Luckily, there's a catch. Actually, a couple. Nearly all of these rays reproduce more like mammals than your typical fish, with females only producing a few pups per year and giving live birth to each one. With these new predators few in number and slow to grow their population, trilobites' massive number of eggs means it's unlikely the skates and rays will make a dent. Furthermore, trilobites have a lot less meat on them than crabs and crustaceans, so while skates and rays can prey on them, they won't be ideal food. Another predator group trilobites are familiar with are the cephalopods. The ancestors of today's squid, octopi, and cuttlefish appeared around the same time as trilobites, so they're also unlikely to be an issue. More important are the modern lineages which trilobites have never seen before: marine mammals, birds, and reptiles, especially around the rivers and beaches. The loggerhead sea turtle is a generalist that lives in the Mediterranean and will eat anything they can find, but they have a preference for bottom-dwelling arthropods and jellyfish. Trilobites have never seen turtles before, not true ones, but other marine reptiles have preyed on them in this niche. Most cetaceans, like dolphins and whales, prefer softer food. Common, bottlenose, striped, rhesos, and the rough-toothed dolphins all mostly hunt fish and cephalopods. They are unlikely to target the trilobites too heavily. While not a dolphin, the harbor porpoise and the long-finned pilot whale go after the same kinds of prey the dolphins do. Sperm whales almost exclusively hunt squid, meaning trilobites are off their menu too. Orcas occasionally enter the Mediterranean and have extremely wide diets. That being said, they usually prefer bigger game and don't waste their time sifting through the sea floor. Though they may start a new fashion trend of wearing trilobites on their heads instead of salmon. Cuvier's beaked whale's diet is poorly studied, but the current evidence suggests they use suction feeding on fish and squid. Again, no hard-shelled critters on the menu. Since the Pliocene, only 3 species of pinniped, seals, and sea lions, have ever been found from the region. The Mediterranean monk seal, its ancestor Pleophoca etrusca, and a poorly known species called Mesophoca mauritanica. Shockingly, the fossil record of pinnipeds in this part of the world is very poor. Either we don't know the extent of seals in this region, or something kept them away. In modern times, true seals are restricted from the Mediterranean due to warm waters, with the exception being the critically endangered monk seal. And even then, while most seals normally take crunchier prey, the Mediterranean monk seal prefers fish, eels, and cephalopods. Its ancestor probably had a similar diet, and thanks to the lack of data, Mesophoca mauritanica's diet is unknown, but it was some kind of a monk seal. Dang, are there really no efficient or effective predators of trilobites in the Mediterranean? I assume there would be some, but it looks like there's not much. Right. Seabirds. Well, during mating season, when trilobites migrate towards the river mouths and beaches, they will become more vulnerable to land-based predators. Crocodiles and otters being larger problems, and tons of seabirds can eat their eggs. But given that female trilobites lay hundreds to hundreds of thousands of eggs, they'll probably satiate the local predators, so I don't see this impacting trilobites too much. Horseshoe crabs use the exact same method of reproduction in the modern era, and their numbers really never started to get impacted until humans started over-harvesting them. Trilobites are better off in the modern era than they were in the Paleozoic in terms of predators, and while competition is a bit higher, it's not like food is scarce when you're scavenging the seafloor. For our final assessment, all 3 species of trilobites managed to make it in the Mediterranean. Elrathia and Wallocerops don't even notice the advent of human civilization. Isotelis, with its large head, is a bit of a target for early humans to be harvesting, but luckily the fact that trilobites have very little meat on them means that they're not going to be that much of a target. It's no culture's dietary staple.
Okay, so how do they taste?
The taste is described as oily, salty, and similar to an oyster or sea urchin. They have almost no body fat, and less than half their meat is edible. Most of them is chitinous exoskeleton after all. That's probably part of the reason they have so few effective predators. Their roe, or eggs, are a much more nutritionally valuable food source, and early humans and even later cultures would definitely harvest them en masse. Luckily, each female lays many, many eggs, so it's hard for even humans to impact their numbers. Culturally, trilobites make a slightly bigger impact. Their shells would be crafted into jewelry, totems, utensils, bowls, hairpieces, sheaths, weapons, and other tools or pieces of art. Egyptians will associate them with the goddess Serket, who is commonly associated with venomous creepy crawlies like scorpions. The Greeks would say trilobites were forged by Hephaestus himself, their armor blessed by the gods. Greeks and Romans would frequently put trilobites on their house crests, shields, or on the masts of ships for good luck and prosperity. Even in our timeline, cultures from around the world have collected trilobite fossils and ascribed meaning to them. A limestone cave in France dated back to 15,000 years ago, called the Caves of Darcy-Secure, hosts numerous collected human trinkets, including a trilobite fossil worn down and put onto a string. It was likely worn as a piece of jewelry, and whatever this pre-agricultural human thought it was, they clearly cared about it. The indigenous Ute people of the Great Basin in Utah also collected trilobites. Their favorite, I'm happy to say, was the species Elrathia kingi, which is partially why I chose them for this episode. Since 1000 CE, the Ute called them lizard's feet, or water bugs, and knew that they were related to or represented some kind of animal. So imagine how shocked many people would be to eventually find them alive, thriving in the same place where human history has been recorded the longest. Trilobites become a symbol of perseverance, and many a legend told of these tiny insect-like animals that they could turn themselves to stone as a way to explain their near-identical appearance in fossils. While their impact on human culture would be relatively small, it would be an endearing and common background piece. So with our trilobites safe and set in the Pliocene, let's see what happens when we turn on the clock. The Glidobite. An unusual descendant of Elrathia kingi has left its benthic habitat for the open ocean. Triremops perseus is a 1/8 inch long hunter of copepods and zooplanktons in the riptide of the seas. Most of Elrathia's population stay deep, always sticking to the darker corners of the sea. Thanks to their anoxic adaptations, they have thrived and diversified more than their larger cousins. But most of their descendants didn't change much. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. At some point, a random mutation in an individual opened a door of possibilities. One Elrathia kingi was born with a second set of legs on each segment. This was a slight hindrance when scurrying on the sea floor, but when disturbed and escape was essential, it could swim away faster than its kin. Our little double-legged friend found success catching zooplankton rather than foraging on the seafloor, and a new lineage spurged from them. Triremops perseus has huge compound eyes, similar in size and shape to a dragonfly, all the better to track fast-moving prey and to warn them of potential predators. Long, whisker-like tendrils on the side of the head and tails aid in detecting changes in water movement and pressure, an added bonus to their environmental perception. But most importantly are the double-layered rows of paddle-like legs running down the segments of their body. Thanks to that random mutation 3 million years prior, the body segments of these trilobites each have 2 sets of legs, one above and one below. While useless and energy deficient on the sea floor, this helped boost their mobility in the brief instances they swim up in the water column. Named after the Roman ships that utilized a similar placement of oars, and to the Greek legends, Trilobites Perseus is now a widespread member of the Mediterranean plankton, and is the only trilobite to spread out into the Atlantic since their arrival. Currents have carried them across most of Earth's tropical or subtropical waters. Unlike their non-swimming relatives, they breed in the open water, not returning to shore to bury their eggs. They have become part of the planktonic biota of the seas, and so their predators are no longer deep-sea shell crushers, but open-water animals. Luckily, they produce young year-round, and number in the trillions, so any lost to predation are quickly replaced. While their anatomy may seem strange and unrealistic, it's actually very similar to a free-swimming trilobite of the past, particularly convergent to the species Carolinides. Isotelis imperator. Crawling along the seafloor of the warm Mediterranean is a giant of its kind. Isotelis imperator is an aircraft carrier of a trilobite, using its superb sense of smell to find whale falls and other sources of food. At 4 feet, or 1.21 meters, and 50 to 75 pounds, or 22 to 35 kilograms, it's a titan of trilobites. Fully grown adults have no predators aside from a very bored, very sadistic orca. But they do have parasites. Lots of them. Adults accumulate barnacles over the years, and imperator can often be aged by the relative number of barnacles across their back. While the parasitic crustaceans do weigh down their host, they do offer a little extra protection from the occasional shark or cetacean that thinks it can flip over these mighty trilobites. Imperator, when reaching their maximum size, cannot crawl on land, so most remain in the deeper waters, searching for the best food sources. They only return to the shallows when it's time to breed, but unlike their cousins who travel to brackish river mouths, imperator use island beaches as their nesting grounds. More than any other trilobite, this species has been hit hard by human activity. They are harvested more often than the others, and the islands they need to breed often get overrun by human civilizations. Even worse, once the Industrial Revolution took off, ocean acidification weakens their exoskeleton. This is true of all animals that have a hard outer shell, but considering the sheer size Isotelis imperator reaches, they were some of the first to suffer. Combined with overfishing, this species is endangered in the modern era, with few individuals ever reaching more than a meter in length. Still, they've just barely managed to persist, a relic of an ancient time given a second chance.
Super trooper lights are gonna find me shining like the sun, smiling, having fun, feeling like a number one. Tonight the
Histrictops brutus, the super trooper. Our first descendant of Wallaceraps, Histrictops brutus is loaded with spines, spikes, and thorns, all derived from their ancestor's large forward-facing horn, which is still longer than the others. A horn or spike is present on 85% of its back, and when curled up, they spread out to create a globe of thorns. Each spike is also recurved, with a tiny, harpoon-like backwards-facing hook. This makes it so that anything that gets caught by it has to painfully rip it off. H. brutus has another trick up its sleeve. That hook on its spines would be a disadvantage, making it easy to pick up and drag around. However, this trilobite molts in stages rather than all at once. Each segment peels individually, more like the scutes on a turtle's back than a traditional exoskeleton. This means a chunk of trilobite can be embedded into a predator and carried off, while the rest of the animal remains mostly intact. They eat whatever they can find on the seafloor, digging into the sand and sediment like spiky little Roombas, continuing the long-standing trilobite tradition. They prefer shallow reef areas, but can be found across the Mediterranean seafloor. At just 5 inches, or 127 millimeters long, it's an unappetizing meal for most potential predators. Once adults, they usually have no need to worry about being eaten, aside from the rare European otter traveling out into brackish waters. Able to use rocks and simple tools to break open hard-shelled animals, otters are a nightmare for any trilobite, and none of the little arthropods have any way to defend against them. There's so little meat on these trilobites that even humans don't bother trying to eat them, though their exoskeletons are commonly incorporated into fashion by the wealthier cultures over the millennia. Nematobite. The nematobite, Wallaceurops nematocyte, is a subspecies of Wallaceurops that has managed to develop a symbiotic relationship with a native species of an enemy. Anatomically, it's not very different from its ancestor, aside from the change of its horn. Instead of a trident-shaped fork, it's a U-shaped set of tines, better shaped for holding its partner in crime. The tines are wider and grooved, creating a better attachment point, and similar to a tuning fork. More unique than its adapted ally is Tripidium regina. Related to the snake-lox anemone, their polyps have tuned into the mating pheromones of Wallaceurops nematocyte. During the breeding season, the polyps of T. regina swim as fast as they can towards the competing males, looking to anchor themselves onto the horns of jousting trilobites, which is how they got their scientific name, Tripidium regina, which translates to dancing queen. The trilobite gets a much appreciated edge against rival males who don't have as many anemones attached to them. The anemone is transported to areas with higher food resources and gets to eat whatever scraps the trilobite rips off when it's eating carcasses. Because of this, Wallaceurops nematocyte gets much larger than its ancestor, reaching nearly a foot in length. They share their food with T. regina, as the anemone is a messy eater and its scraps can also fall into the front of the trilobite's face. Even better, when the trilobite is chowing down on a carcass, it attracts smaller scavengers, some of which get caught by the anemone. A Wallaceurops nematocyte that lacks its partner is far worse off than one with its little travel buddy. Both can survive on their own, but work better together. If either is solo and detects its symbiont nearby, they will crawl or swim back to each other until they can join up. This giant underwater marshmallow stick always wants its marshmallow.
Where do I put my cone?
Oh, hey, Marshmallow.
The largest, most successful males carry multiple anemones at once, as a testament to their strength. Females have smaller horns, but often still carry at least one anemone for predator deterrent. A male with no anemone has no chance of mating, so young males compete heavily for new T. regina polyps floating around. They'll joust over these just like their ancestors, long before they joust over a female. The anemones don't really care, they just sit on their host and wait for the excitement to be over. After all, there will always be some more trilobites to hop onto. Once again, a special shout out to all the pieces of art that I used in this video, as you can see linked right here, as well as the papers I cited for sources on information on the trilobites in the Mediterranean Sea, which will also be crossing over the screen right now. And a very, very special thank you to the team of artists that is now working with me to make these episodes. Returning from last episode are Shaded Janet and Barzap01, but there's also a new artist who's joined us, Just Some Guy, aka Noah Red. They have been a huge help in designing these trilobites, and their artwork is phenomenal. Please go subscribe to their channel. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely day. Make sure to, oh god, I hate this part. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you all next time.
What the fuck?